You are not worried about life itself, but about the judgments you keep accepting without examination. Every anxious thought you feel is a claim your mind has not questioned, and it is shaping your peace more than any event around you. You have been reacting instead of governing, and that is why your inner life feels unstable, even when nothing outside is truly certain. This is where Stoic discipline begins, not in changing the world, but in correcting how you think about it through reason, attention, and daily self-examination. If you are ready to stop letting automatic thoughts decide your emotions, stay here and continue with this work, and consider subscribing to walk this examined path daily with others who are choosing inner order over mental noise. Number 1. Distinguish what you control and release everything beyond it. Listen carefully. You are not exhausted because life is too heavy. You are exhausted because you are carrying what does not belong to you. You have taken on the burden of other people's opinions. You have taken on the burden of outcomes you cannot command. You have taken on the burden of imagined disasters that have not happened and may never happen. Then you ask why your mind is restless. The answer is plain. A man who tries to rule what is not his to rule will never know peace. He will wake with fear. He will work with fear. He will eat with fear. He will lie down with fear. And even in quiet he will not be quiet, because he has trained himself to chase what cannot be held. You must begin here, not with comfort, not with reassurance, with truth. There are things that belong to you and things that do not. Your judgments belong to you. Your choices belong to you. Your attention belongs to you. Your words belong to you. Your conduct belongs to you. What others think of you does not belong to you. What they say behind your back does not belong to you. Whether the future pleases you does not belong to you. Whether your body never grows old does not belong to you. Whether money stays or leaves does not belong to you. Whether the world praises your effort does not belong to you. If you do not learn this distinction, you will spend your whole life kneeling before what can never obey you. This is the first discipline of a free person. Sort every concern into one of two places. Is it within my control or outside it? If it is within my control, then I must govern it with reason and virtue. If it is outside it, then I must let it go without protest, not with a false smile, not with denial, with strength. Most people say they accept fate while secretly bargaining with it. They repeat calm words while their heart continues to demand that the world behave according to their preferences. That is not acceptance, that is confusion. Acceptance begins when you stop arguing with reality. Reality does not bend because you dislike it. Life does not pause because you are anxious. The only honest answer is to meet what is in front of you and to do your work without demanding that the universe flatter you. Look at the mind that worries. It is usually not guarding truth. It is guarding preference. It says, "This must go my way, or I cannot be well." That is a weak sentence. That is a sentence fit for a slave to his own cravings. The free person speaks differently. He says, "I will do what is right whether I am praised or ignored. I will choose rightly whether I am rewarded or resisted. I will act with discipline whether I feel confident or afraid. My peace does not depend on events obeying me. My peace depends on me obeying reason." This is where freedom begins, not when the world submits to you, when you submit yourself to what is right. You worry because you keep trying to live in the future. You imagine the argument that has not happened. You rehearse the failure that has not arrived. You build scenes in your head and then suffer as though they were already real. You do this because the mind is undisciplined. It moves ahead of evidence. It feeds on possibility and calls it knowledge. It confuses imagination with reality. So discipline it. When the mind leaps into tomorrow, ask it one question: is this in my power now? If the answer is no, then return to the present task. If the answer is yes, then act. Do not sit and entertain fear as if fear were wisdom. Fear is often nothing more than a thought that has not been examined. You must train your judgment. This is not optional. Every feeling follows a judgment, and every worry begins with a judgment that has not been tested. A child sees a shadow and believes it is a threat. An untrained mind does the same with a rumor, a delay, a silence, a glance, a message that has not come, a plan that may fail, a body that feels different, a day that seems uncertain. It cries danger before it asks whether danger is real. This is weakness of judgment. The cure is not to silence thought by force. The cure is to question thought by reason. Ask what exactly has happened. Ask what is merely assumed. Ask what is known and what is invented. Ask whether the thing itself is evil, or whether you have simply judged it evil because it resists your desire. You may lose money. That is not a moral disgrace. You may be misunderstood. That is not a moral disgrace. You may be delayed. That is not a moral disgrace. You may be ill. That is not a moral disgrace. You may be ill. That is not a moral disgrace. You may be dismissed by people who never valued truth. That is not a moral disgrace. The only true disgrace is to abandon your character in the face of these things. That is the line you must never cross. The worry of most people is not that they will lose something external. It is that their self-image will be wounded. They fear being exposed, being ordinary, being wrong, being unable to control the outcome. But what is your self-image worth if it cannot endure truth? What is your pride worth if it falls apart under pressure? What is your life worth if it is built on appearance instead of virtue? Begin each morning with this simple act. Before you touch the world, remind yourself of what is yours. Say to yourself that today people may interrupt you, misunderstand you, oppose you, ignore you, or praise you without reason. The day may bring ease or difficulty. None of that is yours to command. What is yours is how you will meet it. You can choose patience. You can choose honesty. You can choose courage. You can choose restraint. You can choose not to lie, not to panic, not to chase approval, not to become small when tested. This morning reflection is not decorative. It is armor. It prepares the soul to receive the day without being conquered by it. And when the day strikes you, pause before reaction. That pause is sacred. In that space, the whole life of a person can turn. A harsh word lands, a plan collapses, a person disappoints you, the body tightens, the mind surges. You want to answer at once, defend at once, complain at once, flee at once. Do not obey the first impulse. That first impulse is not always false, but it is always incomplete. Put space between the event and your response. In that space, ask whether your response will make you more just, more controlled, more courageous, more wise. If it will not, then it is not fit for you. A free person is not one who never feels the first movement of fear. He is one who refuses to be ruled by it. Do not think that worry proves care. It does not. Worry is often a form of self-indulgence. It is the mind circling around itself, feeding on its own agitation, pretending that agitation is responsibility. Real care is action. Real care is preparation. Real care is honesty. Real care is doing what can be done and leaving the rest alone. If there is a task in front of you, then do it well. If there is a conversation to have, then speak plainly. If there is a duty to fulfill, then fulfill it without complaint. But after that, stop. Do not keep digging into the soil to see whether the seed is growing. You do not command growth by watching harder. You command your part by tending it faithfully and then allowing nature to do what is not yours to force. Most anxiety comes from attachment to results. You want certainty. You want the outcome to be favorable before you commit yourself. You want the road to be visible before you take the first step. But life does not offer that to anyone. The soldier does not know the whole battle before the first advance. The farmer does not know the harvest before the seed is planted. The physician does not know the cure before he begins. The reasonable person acts according to the best judgment available and does not demand guarantees. He understands that virtue is in the choosing and the doing, not in the final score handed down by fortune. This is a hard truth for the vain and the fearful. It is a liberating truth for the disciplined. You must also learn to desire less, not because life is worthless, but because excessive desire enslaves you. The more you cling to comfort, the more fear you create. The more you cling to praise, the more you become dependent on strangers. The more you cling to certainty, the more every change appears as threat. The more you cling to pleasure, the more you fear the loss of it. Discipline your desire until it obeys reason. Want only what is fitting. Want to act well. Want to speak honestly. Want to think clearly. Want to keep your mind clean. Want to be useful. Want to be steady. Want to be just. These are goods that cannot be stolen by chance. Everything else is borrowed. When you say you worry about everything, ask whether you are truly worried about everything or whether you are simply refusing to bear a few painful truths. Sometimes the mind spreads anxiety across many objects so that it does not have to face the one thing that matters. It may be the fear of failure. It may be resentment. It may be shame. It may be the refusal to accept that some things have already ended. It may be the unwillingness to let others be as they are. It may be the refusal to admit that you have wasted time and must now begin again. Worry becomes a cover. It distracts you from responsibility. Strip it away. Name the real issue, then meet it. A man can endure what he has named. He suffers more from fog than from fire. The mind must be trained like a body. No one grows strong by accident. No one becomes calm by wishful thinking. So practice small, regular acts of self-command. When something irritates you, do not immediately speak. Hold your tongue until your reason has entered the room. When you want to check, check again. Ask again, scroll again, plead again, stop and refuse the compulsion. When you feel the pull of fear, breathe and return to the present duty. When praise comes, do not swell with it. When blame comes, do not collapse under it. Treat both as passing noise. They are not the measure of your worth. Your worth is measured by whether you remain faithful to what is good. You must also examine your thoughts at the end of the day. This is a severe and useful habit. Ask what disturbed you. Ask what judgment created that disturbance. Ask where you could have chosen better. Ask where you surrendered too quickly. Ask where you were ruled by vanity or impatience or resentment. Do not perform this examination like a lawyer defending himself. Perform it like a judge searching for truth. The goal is not guilt. The goal is correction. Every evening is a chance to become more aware of how often the mind lies to itself. Write down what happened if that helps. Be exact. The point is to see your own patterns clearly. What repeats without examination will continue without limit. A person who knows the difference between what is up to him and what is not up to him becomes difficult to disturb. He is not cold. He is not numb. He is not careless. He is steady. He can love without clinging. He can work without panic. He can lose without breaking. He can wait without sinking into fear. He can be alone without feeling abandoned because he has learned how to keep company with his own reason. That is a higher companionship than the noise of crowds. It is the presence of a mind that knows its duty and does not betray itself. Think how much suffering comes from trying to control people. You want them to understand you before you speak clearly. You want them to behave well before you remain just. You want them to treat you fairly before you stop judging with anger. This is backward. The conduct of others is not your department. Your department is your own character. You can advise, you can persuade, you can set boundaries. You can choose with whom you spend your time, but you cannot force another soul to become wise. Stop resenting them for failing to be what you wish. That is not their burden, it is yours, and you are carrying it because you will not let go of the illusion that their choices determine your peace. Release that illusion now. Your mind will resist, because the mind loves familiar chains. It prefers the fantasy of control to the reality of responsibility. It wants to believe that if it just thinks enough, it can protect itself from all harm. But control is not protection. Often it is merely anxiety dressed as management. True protection is inner firmness. It is the refusal to be dragged away from virtue by whatever happens. Build that firmness by practicing little renunciations. Leave some comfort untouched. Let some inconvenience remain without complaint. Stand in cold water a little longer. Walk without music. Eat a simpler meal now and then. Use less than you could use. Sleep without demanding perfect conditions. These are not punishments, these are training. They teach the soul that it can endure more than it claims and need less than it demands. There is great power in deciding what counts as harm. Most people think harm is being insulted or overlooked or delayed or deprived. But the Stoic mind knows that none of these things can damage the ruling faculty unless it consents. You are harmed when you become petty, dishonest, angry, greedy, cowardly, or cruel. That is the real wound. External events may press on you, but they do not have moral force unless you give it to them. This is why you must guard your judgments. If you call every inconvenience disaster, you will live like a victim. If you call every inconvenience a chance to practice virtue, you will live like a student of reason. The event remains the same, the soul changes. And what is virtue? It is not performance, it is not image, it is not being admired. It is the state of a mind that thinks and acts according to reason. It is justice in dealings. It is courage in uncertainty. It is self-command in appetite. It is wisdom in judgment. These are not lofty words for the page. They are the only solid goods a human being has. Everything else may rise and fall. Virtue remains available in poverty and in wealth, in health and in sickness, in obscurity and in fame, in youth and in age. That is why it is enough. When you choose virtue, you choose what cannot be taken from you by accident, by loss, or by the opinions of others. Now apply this to the ordinary places of your life. At work, do not measure your worth by praise or your fear by the possibility of criticism. Do your task well because it is your duty. In relationships, do not demand that others soothe every insecurity you carry. Be honest, be respectful, be patient, and accept that others may still disappoint you. In solitude, do not run from your thoughts with endless noise. Sit with yourself and inspect what you are becoming. In temptation, do not ask how close you can get to the edge without falling. Ask whether the act would strengthen your character or weaken it. In failure, do not turn against yourself. Learn, correct, return to duty. In success, do not become soft and proud. Remain exacting with yourself. Keep your soul awake. One of the greatest causes of worry is the refusal to endure uncertainty. But uncertainty is part of life. It is not an exception. It is the condition under which all mortal beings live. You do not know what the next hour will bring. You do not know what will be lost or spared. You do not know how long you will keep what you hold. Since this is true, why act shocked when uncertainty appears? Why call it injustice when it is the nature of the world? The reasonable man does not demand an arrangement that no human being has ever possessed. He prepares himself to meet whatever comes with dignity. He does not say the road must be clear. He says, I must be clear. This is why you must take responsibility for your interpretations. The event does not cry out to you with a fixed meaning. You assign the meaning. The delay can become insult or opportunity. A mistake can become shame or instruction. A loss can become ruin or training. A hard day can become proof of weakness or proof of endurance. Much of your suffering comes from instant interpretation. Slow the mind, separate the fact from the story. Then choose the story that serves reason rather than fear. This is not self-deception, it is self-government. The world provides events, you provide judgment. Be careful with what you provide. Some worry because they have confused being busy with being righteous. They fill their days to avoid stillness. They answer every message. They chase every task. They fear pause because pause forces honesty. But a hurried mind is not necessarily a virtuous mind. Sometimes it is merely a distracted one. Make time for stillness, sit without demand, walk without aim, let the mind see itself, ask what it is constantly chasing, ask what it is afraid to face, ask whether your pace has become a mask for unrest. In stillness, the mind begins to reveal what it has been hiding under motion. This revelation is painful only to the part of you that wants illusion. It is healing to the part of you that wants truth. You will not conquer worry by promising yourself that nothing bad will happen. You will conquer it by becoming the kind of person who can endure what happens without losing himself. That is a different task, and it is a better one. It does not depend on magic, it depends on practice. Every time you endure a discomfort without complaint, you strengthen yourself. Every time you let go of a concern outside your control, you grow freer. Every time you choose reason over impulse, you make your soul more stable. Every time you return to duty after disappointment, you prove that your peace is not chained to outcomes. This is how a life is transformed, not by one great emotional moment, by repeated acts of discipline. Do not wait to feel ready. Readiness comes from doing the work, not from waiting for perfect conditions. The disciplined life begins where excuses end. You do not need another theory, you need another decision. The decision to stop worshipping fear. The decision to stop feeding every anxious thought. The decision to stop asking the world to protect your comfort. The decision to stand upright in your own mind. A person who keeps making this decision becomes calmer, because he no longer wastes energy on what cannot be mastered. He saves his strength for what is his to govern. What is your life for, if not this? To act well, to think clearly, to treat others justly, to endure hardship without becoming bitter, to accept what you cannot change, to refuse what degrades you, to remain faithful to reason when the world rewards noise, to live each day as though your character is the only possession that matters. That is not a small life. It is the only life worthy of a rational being. Everything else is decoration. Everything else may be lost. Everything else may fade. But a soul trained in reason remains itself. So when worry rises again, and it will rise again because habit does not die quickly, do not panic at the return of the old pattern. Recognize it, name it, separate it. Ask whether this fear concerns your judgment or the world's outcome. Ask what is in your power now, then act there and only there. Do the next useful thing. Wash the dish. Send the honest message. Finish the work. Apologize if needed. Rest when duty is done. Stop feeding imagined trouble. Stop treating every thought as a messenger of truth. Many thoughts are only noises of a confused mind. Let them pass. If you practice this long enough, your life will change in a way that no rumor can disturb. You will still face loss. You will still face conflict. You will still face uncertainty, but you will no longer face them as a prisoner of your own imagination. You will face them as a person who knows where his power begins and where it ends. That knowledge is enough to make a human being hard to shake, not because he has become invulnerable, but because he has become honest. He no longer asks of life what life cannot give. He asks of himself what he can give: reason, restraint, justice, courage, and a steady refusal to betray his own mind. There is no mystery here. The secret is simple, and because it is simple, most people overlook it. Stop trying to command what is not yours. Govern what is yours with rigor. The body may age, the crowd may turn, plans may fail, the future may surprise you. None of this has the authority to take your inner freedom unless you surrender it. Do not surrender. Stand guard over your judgments. Keep your desires small and clean. Keep your duties clear. Keep your attention in the present. Keep your character above convenience. Keep returning to the distinction between what is yours and what is not. That repeated return is the road out of fear. Be severe with your excuses and gentle with your effort. Do not excuse weakness as sensitivity. Do not excuse distraction as creativity. Do not excuse dependence on approval as empathy. Call things by their proper names, then correct them. A disciplined mind does not pretend to be perfect. It becomes honest enough to improve. That honesty is the beginning of strength. The person who can look directly at his own fear without running from it is already farther along than the one who hides it beneath polished words. So look, name, choose, act. Today is not promised to repeat. You are not owed another chance to become noble. You have this hour. Use it. Use it to let go of the false burden. Use it to do the next right thing. Use it to stop living as though your peace depends on the world's permission. It does not. Your peace depends on whether you will finally take up the rule of your own mind. That rule begins now, not later, not after the message arrives, not after the problem is solved. Now. And if fear returns after this, as it often does, meet it with the same answer. What is this to me if it is outside my control? What is mine is my judgment. What is mine is my choice. What is mine is my conduct. I will guard these. I will not hand them over. I will not sell them for comfort. I will not trade them for approval. I will not abandon them for the sake of ease. This is how a person stops worrying about everything, not by obtaining control over the world, by learning control over himself. And when he learns that, he becomes difficult to enslave. He becomes steady. He becomes clear. He becomes free. Number 2, govern your judgments before they govern your peace each day. Wake up and do not trust the first story your mind tells you. The mind rises with force, but not with wisdom. It throws out judgments before it has earned the right to speak. It says this is bad. It says that person is against me. It says today will be difficult. It says I cannot handle what is coming. None of that is knowledge. It is only a habit of speech inside the soul. And if you let it speak first and last each day, then you will live as its servant. You will react before you reason. You will complain before you examine. You will fear before you understand. That is not a life governed by reason. That is a life dragged by impulse. Your peace is not broken first by events. It is broken first by the judgment you place upon events. A delay is not suffering by itself. A harsh message is not suffering by itself. A changed plan is not suffering by itself. A mistake is not suffering by itself. These things become suffering when you decide they are injuries to your good. The body, the weather, the opinions of others, the movements of fortune, these are all outside your command. They may press on you, they may limit you, they may inconvenience you, but they do not have the power to corrupt your character unless you give them that power through a false judgment. This is where the battle begins, not in the outer world, in the ruling part of the self. You must become strict with the judgments that enter your mind. Do not receive every thought as if it were a wise advisor. Some thoughts are weak, some are frightened, some are selfish, some are angry, some are childish, some are old wounds dressed up as certainty. The fact that a thought appears does not mean it deserves obedience. Before you accept any judgment, Ask whether it is about what is truly within your control or about what is not. If it concerns your choice, then it is your duty to handle it with care. If it concerns anything else, then you must let go of your claim to mastery. This single discipline can change the shape of a day. It can change the shape of a life. Most people live without examining the language of their own mind. They say, I was disrespected, I was ignored, I was cheated, I was made to feel small, I cannot be happy unless this changes. Notice what these statements do. They place power outside the self. They make the soul dependent on other people's conduct and on circumstances that do not owe you obedience. The result is predictable. A person who speaks this way becomes fragile. He is offended easily. He is disappointed often. He is ruled by approval and wounded by resistance. He believes he is describing the world when in truth he is exposing his own lack of discipline. Begin each morning by reviewing the day before it starts. This is not to fill yourself with fear. It is to prepare the mind for reality. Ask yourself what kinds of judgments usually disturb you. Is it the judgment that people must treat you fairly in order for you to remain just? Is it the judgment that comfort is necessary for courage? Is it the judgment that a difficult task means you are being harmed? Is it the judgment that being disliked is worse than being dishonest? Speak plainly to yourself. Write these judgments down if needed. Look at them without mercy and without drama. The aim is not shame. The aim is correction. A mind that can see its own errors clearly is already beginning to heal. When the day begins to move against your wishes, and it will move against your wishes because no day is required to obey you, pause before you answer the first feeling. There is always a small space before assent. In that space your freedom lives. A situation presents itself, then a judgment arises, then an emotion follows, then action. If you can interrupt the chain between the judgment and the assent, you regain your power. This is the work of self-command. Say to yourself, this is an impression, not yet a fact. Say this may be inconvenience, but not injury. Say this is outside my command, and therefore not mine to fear. Say what remains for me is to choose well. These words are not decoration. They are training. You must also stop using complaint as a way of life. Complaint is one of the most common habits of the untrained soul. It pretends to be a response to suffering, but often it is only a refusal to accept the shape of reality. A man complains when he thinks his comfort should have been protected. A woman complains when she believes the world should have been easier. Yet nature never promised ease. It promised change. It promised effort. It promised loss. It promised that the wise and the foolish alike would be tested by what they cannot control. Complaint changes none of this. It only weakens the one who complains. It teaches the soul to resist what it must learn to bear. Better to say, this is the condition I have been given, and now I will meet it well. Better to ask what virtue requires in this moment. Better to look at the inconvenience and make it useful. If the line is long, then practice patience. If the task is hard, then practice endurance. If the person is rude, then practice restraint. If the result is uncertain, then practice trust in reason and effort. Every condition can be turned into training if you stop judging it as a threat to your peace. Your peace is not preserved by favorable conditions. It is preserved by a disciplined response. The world will constantly invite you to misjudge. It will tell you that popularity is safety. It will tell you that comfort is good. It will tell you that discomfort means something is wrong. It will tell you that losing a temporary advantage is a disaster. Do not believe it. None of these things are good in themselves. None of them are bad in themselves. They become useful or harmful depending on how they are used by your character. Virtue is the only true good because virtue alone depends entirely on your own choice. Everything else is borrowed. Everything else can be taken away. So when the world tempts you to fear loss, ask whether you are being asked to lose something that was ever truly yours. If it was never yours, then your grief is built on a false claim. This is why you must train your attention. A wandering mind is an easy target for false judgments. It keeps leaping ahead to imagined trouble or backward to old wounds. It multiplies problems by imagination. It calls this foresight. It calls this memory. But often it is only disorder. Bring attention back to the present work. The present moment is the only place where choice can happen. You cannot choose yesterday. You cannot choose next year. You can only choose now. So return now. Wash the dish with full attention. Answer the message with full honesty. Speak to the person in front of you with full justice. Finish the duty before you. The mind that stays with the present has less room for fear and more room for reason. Every time a judgment rises in you, ask whether it belongs to your nature as a rational being or whether it is simply a habit. Some judgments are inherited from childhood, some come from the crowd, some were formed by fear after disappointment, some were learned from vanity. You are not required to keep them, you are required to examine them. A person may have spent years believing that being ignored means being worthless. That is not a truth, it is an opinion. Another may believe that failure means shame. That is not a truth, it is an opinion. Another may believe that anger proves strength. That is not a truth, it is an opinion. The examined life begins when you stop confusing opinions with facts. Do not be afraid to challenge yourself with severe honesty. Ask what you gain by holding on to certain judgments. Often you will find that fear protects something vain in you. A judgment may say, I need them to approve of me. Beneath that is pride. Another may say, I cannot stand this discomfort. Beneath that is softness. Another may say, I was treated unfairly, so I may act without restraint. Beneath that is revenge. Another may say, I must know the outcome now or I cannot move. Beneath that is dependence. When you uncover the hidden motive, the judgment loses some of its force. What has been made visible can be corrected. What remains hidden keeps ruling. And yet do not imagine that correction is a single victory. It is a daily return. You will need to return to reason again and again because habit is stubborn. The old judgment will rise. The old fear will knock. The old complaint will try to resume its place. Meet it without theatrical struggle. Do not say I should already be beyond this. Say the first see it and I will not follow it. Do not insult yourself for being human. Insist on discipline because you are human. The rational part of you is not strong because it never wavers. It becomes strong because it chooses well after wavering. That is the difference between a soul ruled by impulse and a soul ruled by principle. If you want a practical rule for the day, then keep this one close. When something disturbs you, do not ask first how to escape it. Ask first what judgment made it disturbing. That question reaches the root. Maybe you judged delay as loss. Maybe you judged criticism as injury. Maybe you judged a changed plan as ruin. Maybe you judged uncertainty as danger. Once you see the judgment, you can replace it with truth. Delay is not loss of character. Criticism is not loss of virtue. A changed plan is not ruin. Uncertainty is not danger to a good mind. These things are simply facts to be managed. Your task is not to control the facts. Your task is to keep your soul upright among them. There is dignity in this work. It is not loud. It does not seek applause. It happens in the small hidden places where nobody sees whether you are faithful to yourself. A man does not become wise by talking about wisdom. He becomes wise when he refuses to let a false judgment direct his life. He becomes wise when he does not make his mood the law of the day. He becomes wise when he is slower to condemn and quicker to examine. He becomes wise when he protects the inner seat of judgment as carefully as a guard protects a city gate. That gate must not be opened to every passing impression. This is the reason discipline matters more than talent. Talent can be carried away by panic. Intelligence can be bent by appetite. Success can make a person careless. But disciplined judgment creates a stable life. It allows you to meet praise without vanity and hardship without collapse. It allows you to remain clear when others become confused. It allows you to act with steadiness when the future is unclear. And this steadiness is not coldness. It is the warmth of a soul that no longer wastes itself on arguments with reality. So today, watch your judgments. Not once, not briefly. Watch them throughout the day. When your mind says this should not be happening, answer that it is happening, and now reason must guide the response. When your mind says they should know better, answer that their actions are theirs and your conduct is yours. When your mind says, I cannot bear this, answer that you can bear more than you think, when virtue is your aim. When your mind says this will ruin everything, answer that nothing external ruins the soul unless the soul chooses to be ruined. This is not denial, this is clarity. Do not wait for a calmer life to begin this practice. Begin within the life you already have. The traffic, the work, the family tension, the uncertainty, the noise, the interruptions, the fatigue, all of it is raw material for training. Each moment offers a choice between automatic judgment and examined judgment. Each moment offers a choice between being carried by the first impression or standing under reason. The more often you choose reason, the less power false judgments will have over you. The weaker they become, the freer you will feel. And that freedom is not dependent on fortune, it is built by your own hand. When evening comes, review your judgments without excuse. Which ones were false? Which ones were hasty? Which ones made small things feel large? Which ones turned inconvenience into insult? Which ones made you forget what belongs to you and what does not? Write them down if necessary. Speak to yourself with severity and fairness. Correct the mind as you would correct a friend who is drifting toward ruin. This evening reckoning is a form of respect for your own life. It says your character matters enough to examine. It says your peace matters enough to protect. It says your future self deserves better than a mind left untrained. If you do this day after day, you will notice something important. The world does not become perfect. People do not suddenly become wise. Problems do not vanish. But your inner life begins to change shape. You stop being so easily impressed by noise. You stop overvaluing what others think. You stop confusing discomfort with disaster. You stop surrendering your peace to the first sharp thought that enters your head. In its place grows a quieter power, a steadier power, the power to answer life without being owned by it. That power is the fruit of judged discipline. It is the beginning of freedom. So take responsibility for the first place where your life is decided. It is not the marketplace. It is not the office. It is not the crowd. It is not the internet. It is the judgment chamber of your own mind. Govern there, and you will govern the rest more well. Fail there, and every outer success will remain unstable. The mind that is ruled by false judgments cannot stay at peace for long. But the mind that tests every judgment against reason becomes hard to disturb and hard to deceive. That is the mind you must build. That is the life you must choose. And there is no better time than this day to begin. Number 3. Accept reality without complaint and strengthen your character daily. Stop fighting what is already here. You waste strength every time you argue with reality. You waste it when a circumstance arrives and you meet it with refusal instead of reason. You waste it when you say this should not be happening, as though the world had asked your permission before acting. The world does not consult your comfort. Events do not wait for your approval. The hour comes with what it carries, and the only question worthy of a disciplined mind is how you will meet it. If you meet it with complaint, you become smaller. If you meet it with reason, you become stronger. That is the difference between a life governed by impulse and a life governed by character. Complaint is a form of surrender. It looks like resistance, but it is not. It is the sound of a person who has not yet accepted the nature of life. A complaint says reality must change before I can be steady. A disciplined soul says I will be steady while reality remains as it is. That is a very different inner posture. One depends on the world bending, the other depends on the self standing upright. Most suffering is made worse because people not only endure hardship, but also add resistance to it. They brace against what has already happened. They insult the present moment. They demand that the past be different. They try to punish the present for not being ideal. This does not help them. It only divides the mind against itself. Accepting reality is not the same as liking everything that happens. It is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is not a polite mask over inner resentment. Acceptance is the refusal to lie. It is the courage to say, this is the fact before me. This is the condition I have been given. This is where my duty begins. Once the fact is clear, the mind can work. Before clarity, the mind only flails. A man who keeps asking life to be easier before he can act is a man who has made comfort his ruler. A woman who refuses to begin until every burden is removed has given the burden too much power. Life is not arranged for your ease. It is arranged for your training. That training begins the moment you stop complaining and start meeting what is present. Look closely at complaint and you will see how childish it often is. It says, I should have been spared. It says this inconvenience is beneath me. It says I deserve better conditions before I am willing to be good. But no one is owed a gentle path. No one is promised perfect health. No one is promised respect. No one is promised fair treatment. No one is promised that plans will unfold cleanly. The human being enters a world of change, and change brings loss, delay, pressure, disappointment, and the need for judgment. That is not cruelty, that is nature. To complain that life is difficult is to complain that fire burns. The fact is not the problem. The problem is the refusal to understand what kind of world this is. You become strong by meeting the world as it is, not as you would like it to be. The task is not to romanticize hardship. The task is to remove the poison of self-pity from your response to hardship. Self-pity says, look at what life is doing to me. Character says, what does this demand of me? Self-pity makes the self the center of every event. Character makes duty the center. One asks for exemption, the other asks for instruction. One weakens the soul with emotional noise, the other strengthens it through purpose. If you want to become difficult to break, you must stop rehearsing your injuries and start practicing your response. Morning is the first battlefield. Before the day fills your mind with demands, sit quietly and ask what sort of things are likely to appear. You already know the answer because life is consistent in its tests. There will be discomfort. There will be delay. There will be other people with their own opinions and moods. There will be tasks you do not feel like doing. There will be moments when the body is tired and the mind is tempted to retreat. Prepare for these things before they arrive, not with fear, but with readiness. Tell yourself that none of them are arguments against virtue. None of them excuse dishonesty. None of them suspend your duty. None of them remove your ability to choose a noble response. This is the beginning of daily strength. A prepared mind suffers less because it is less surprised by the shape of life. When complaint rises during the day, do not obey it. Pause and ask whether you are reacting to reality or to your expectation of comfort. Many people think they are suffering from events when they are really suffering from the collapse of a preference. They wanted the easier road. They wanted the quicker answer. They wanted the other person to behave differently. They wanted the weather, the work, the body, the schedule, the outcome to be more agreeable. But desire for ease is not a reason to condemn reality. It is merely a sign that the self has become soft. You harden the self not by cruelty but by discipline. You train it to bear the truth without collapsing into noise. Accepting reality means separating what belongs to you from what does not. What belongs to you is the use you make of the present moment. What belongs to you is whether you tell the truth. What belongs to you is whether you act with fairness, restraint, courage, and wisdom. What does not belong to you is the weather of fortune. What does not belong to you is the final reaction of others. What does not belong to you is whether an event appears favorable. Once this is clear, the mind no longer chases control in every direction. It learns where its real authority lies. This clarity is peace, not because circumstances become gentle, but because the soul stops demanding what it cannot command. There is a sharp dignity in doing your duty under pressure without complaint. Anyone can speak well when conditions are easy. Anyone can appear composed when the day flatters them, but character reveals itself when the road turns rough and the person remains faithful to reason. This is where the soul becomes visible. This is where your philosophy stops being words and becomes flesh. If you can keep your conduct upright while tired, while disappointed, while inconvenienced, while misunderstood, then you are no longer a slave to mood. You have become someone who carries his own standard within himself. That is a strong person, not one who avoids hardship, but one who refuses to be corrupted by it. Daily strengthening of character requires repetition. You will not become steady by reading a noble thought once and then forgetting it. The mind learns by practice, by return, by correction. Each day gives the chance to practice patience when interrupted. Each day gives the chance to practice honesty when tempted to hide. Each day gives the chance to practice endurance when the body resists. Each day gives the chance to practice justice when irritation wants to make you unfair. Each day gives the chance to practice temperance when appetite asks for more than reason allows. This is how a good character is built. Not by one grand declaration, but by countless small refusals to betray yourself. The complaint-filled mind is usually not defending truth. It is defending preference. It says the moment should be easier. It says I should not have to struggle like this. It says I am being treated as though I matter less than I should. But the disciplined mind does not ask whether life is easy enough. It asks whether it is acting rightly enough. That single shift changes everything. A difficult conversation becomes an opportunity to practice honesty and patience. A heavy workload becomes an opportunity to practice steadiness. A broken expectation becomes an opportunity to practice humility. An uncomfortable body becomes an opportunity to practice endurance. Nothing is wasted when the soul knows how to make use of it. You must also watch the way complaint poisons relationships. A person who complains constantly turns every shared moment into a burden for others. He makes his irritation public and then calls it honesty. He expects the world to soothe his discomfort and then becomes offended when it does not. This habit makes him narrow. It makes him hard to live with. It makes him forget that other people also bear burdens. The disciplined person does not add unnecessary heaviness to the lives around him. He brings order where he can. He brings patience where he can. He brings a steady mind where others are disturbed. That is a better use of a human being than endless protest. There is a powerful exercise for this day and for every day. Choose one inconvenience that normally provokes complaint and meet it without a single inward protest. Let the delay be a delay. Let the inconvenience be an inconvenience. Let the discomfort be a discomfort. Do not call it a tragedy. Do not inflate it with dramatic language. Observe it plainly and continue your duty. This is not small. This is training the soul to stop magnifying what is temporary. The more often you do this, the less power irritation will have over you. You will begin to feel that your inner life is no longer at the mercy of every small resistance. Another practice is to end the day by reviewing where you accepted reality and where you resisted it. Be honest about the places where you complained in thought, if not in speech. Ask what exactly you were trying to protect. Often complaint covers wounded pride. Sometimes it covers fear. Sometimes it covers laziness. Sometimes it covers the refusal to accept that the world is not arranged around you. See it clearly. Then correct yourself without theatrics. The purpose of this review is not self-accusation. The purpose is purification. A mind that examines itself honestly becomes cleaner. A clean mind suffers less because it is not constantly adding false judgments to raw events. You will notice that complaint drains energy that should have gone toward action. It steals from the present and gives nothing back. Acceptance returns your power to you. It says, this is the shape of the task and now I will work with it. This is why the disciplined person is often calmer than the complaining one. He is not calm because life has been kind. He is calm because his mind is no longer spending itself on resistance that cannot change the fact. He has learned to use his strength on what can be done now. That is wisdom in motion. The road to inner strength is not paved with comfort. It is built through repeated contact with what you would rather avoid and the decision to remain just anyway. Each time you refuse complaint, you reinforce your character. Each time you meet reality cleanly, you become a little less brittle. Each time you do your duty without protest, you prove that your good does not depend on favorable conditions. This proof matters. It frees you from the lie that peace is something the world must hand to you. Peace is something you create by living in agreement with reason. Do not wait for better days to become disciplined. Better days are often made by discipline itself. Do not wait for the mood to improve. The mood often follows the action. Do not wait for life to become fair before you become noble. Nobility is what allows you to live well, even when fairness is absent. Your task is plain. Accept what is here. Refuse complaint. Strengthen your character through daily practice. Return again and again to reason. Let the mind become a place where events are met with clarity instead of protest. A strong character is not loud. It does not boast of its endurance. It does not announce its calm. It simply remains faithful when challenged. It keeps its word. It keeps its balance. It keeps its judgment clean. It does not waste itself in constant dissatisfaction. It understands that every day will include material for virtue if you are willing to use it. That is enough. You do not need a perfect life to become excellent. You need a disciplined response to the life already in your hands. So take this seriously. The next time your mind reaches for complaint, stop it. The next time you feel the urge to resent what cannot be changed, redirect that energy toward action. The next time the world does not suit your preference, remind yourself that preference is not law. The next time hardship appears, answer it with the question that matters most. What does virtue require now? Then do that. Not tomorrow, now. This is how a person becomes resilient. This is how a person becomes steady. This is how a person turns reality from an enemy into a teacher and builds a character that can stand when comfort fails. Number 4. Discipline your thoughts before fear takes command of your mind. Fear does not usually enter your life by breaking down the door. It enters quietly through a thought you never questioned. It arrives as a quick conclusion, an untested assumption, or a picture of the future that your mind accepts without evidence. Before long, that single thought grows into a feeling. The feeling becomes a habit, and the habit begins directing your choices. You start avoiding what deserves your effort. You delay what requires courage. You surrender your peace before anything has truly happened. Then you wonder why your life feels smaller than it once did. The answer is not hidden. You allowed your thoughts to become your master instead of requiring them to answer to reason. Your mind is the first place where discipline must be established. A person who cannot govern his own thoughts will eventually be governed by his fears. This does not mean you can prevent every impression from appearing, Thoughts arrive without invitation. Images appear, memories return, possibilities present themselves. None of this is yet a failure. The failure begins when you immediately agree with every thought as though it were already true. A disciplined person understands that the first appearance of an idea is only an invitation. It is not yet a command. It must be examined before it is welcomed into the ruling part of the mind. Many people believe fear is created by circumstances. They point to uncertainty, criticism, illness, financial pressure, or difficult relationships as the source of their unrest. Yet two people may face the same event while responding in completely different ways. One becomes consumed by anxiety, while the other remains steady enough to act with wisdom. The difference is not found in the event, it is found in the judgment each person forms about it. This is where your responsibility begins. You are not responsible for preventing every challenge. You are responsible for examining the meaning you attach to that challenge. The undisciplined mind rushes toward conclusions because it mistakes speed for intelligence. It wants immediate certainty even when certainty is impossible. It fills empty spaces with fearful stories. A delayed reply becomes rejection. A difficult conversation becomes disaster. A mistake becomes permanent failure. A moment of uncertainty becomes proof that everything is falling apart. None of these conclusions are required by reality. They are created by a mind that has forgotten its duty to examine before accepting. When you fail to question these thoughts, they begin shaping your emotions, and your emotions begin directing your behavior without the guidance of reason. Train yourself to notice the moment a fearful thought first appears. This moment is brief, but it contains enormous power. Before the thought gathers strength, pause and observe it without immediately calling it true. Ask yourself what has actually happened. Separate the plain fact from the interpretation that quickly attached itself to it. The fact may be simple: someone disagreed with you, a plan changed, a result remains unknown. Your interpretation is something different. You decided disagreement meant rejection. You decided change meant failure. You decided uncertainty meant danger. Once you separate these two things, fear begins to lose the authority you mistakenly granted it. Your thinking deserves the same discipline that you would expect from your actions. You would not allow yourself to speak carelessly without consequence. You would not intentionally act without considering the result. Yet many people allow their minds complete freedom to wander through suspicion, resentment, exaggeration, and fantasy without any examination at all. They guard their reputation more carefully than their own judgment. This is backwards. Character is shaped long before anyone sees your behavior. It is formed in the quiet conversations you have with yourself throughout the day. Begin every morning by preparing your mind before it encounters the world. Do not immediately surrender your attention to noise, opinion, or distraction. Sit with yourself for a few moments and remind yourself that your greatest responsibility today is not controlling events but governing your responses. Tell yourself that your mind will present unnecessary fears. It will exaggerate inconvenience. It will seek comfort instead of virtue. Expect these tendencies without resentment. You are not preparing for failure. You are preparing to recognize temptation before it takes hold. As the day unfolds, make attention your constant companion. Thoughts move quickly, often so quickly that you mistake them for reality itself. Slow them down. Whenever your mind produces a frightening conclusion, ask whether reason has approved it or whether emotion has rushed ahead without permission. This question alone creates distance between you and fear. That distance is where freedom begins. Freedom is not the absence of difficult thoughts. Freedom is the refusal to become their servant. Notice how often fear speaks in absolute language. It says everything will go wrong. It says nothing will improve. It says everyone is against you. It says you will never recover. Such language should immediately awaken suspicion within you. Reality is rarely absolute. But fear prefers certainty because certainty gives it authority. The disciplined mind refuses to accept sweeping conclusions. It remains patient enough to examine each situation according to the facts rather than according to emotion. Many people spend more time protecting themselves from imagined futures than fulfilling their present responsibilities. They rehearse conversations that never happen. They anticipate failures that never arrive. They exhaust themselves defending against possibilities while neglecting duties that stand directly before them. This is one of fear's greatest victories. It distracts the mind from what can actually be done today. A disciplined soul refuses this distraction. It returns its attention to the present obligation, because only the present allows virtue to become action. There is another danger hidden within fearful thinking. Fear often disguises itself as wisdom. It tells you that endless worrying is preparation. It convinces you that constant mental rehearsal will somehow prevent misfortune. Yet endless worry accomplishes nothing except exhausting the very mind that must eventually face reality. Preparation belongs to reason. Worry belongs to imagination. Reason studies what can be done and then acts. Fear invents endless possibilities and never reaches a decision. Learn to recognize the difference. Your thoughts become stronger every time you repeat them without examination. If you continually tell yourself that you are fragile, eventually you will begin living as though every difficulty confirms it. If you continually tell yourself that hardship is unbearable, your endurance will weaken before hardship even arrives. The mind slowly becomes shaped by whatever it repeatedly accepts as true. Therefore, choose carefully which thoughts deserve repetition. Repeat thoughts that strengthen discipline, encourage honesty, and direct you toward virtue. Refuse to nourish thoughts that weaken courage or increase dependence on circumstances beyond your authority. Practice speaking differently within your own mind. Instead of saying this situation is impossible, ask what right action is available. Instead of saying this fear controls me, remind yourself that thoughts require your agreement before they become your ruler. Instead of asking why life has become difficult, ask how this moment can strengthen patience, justice, courage, or self-restraint. The quality of your inner dialogue gradually determines the quality of your character because every repeated judgment shapes future choices. There will be moments when fear arrives suddenly despite your preparation. Your heart may race, your breathing may change, your imagination may begin constructing painful outcomes. Do not condemn yourself for these first reactions. They are not yet your final response. Your responsibility begins with what follows. Return immediately to reason. Refuse to feed the fearful picture with additional assumptions. Look only at what is actually present. Ask yourself what remains within your power at this moment. Then direct your energy there without delay. Your relationships also reveal whether your thoughts have been disciplined. Many conflicts begin long before words are spoken. They begin when you assume another person's intention without evidence. You decide they meant disrespect. You decide silence means hostility. You decide disagreement means betrayal. These judgments produce anger before truth has even been consulted. A disciplined person delays conclusions until reason has gathered enough evidence to speak honestly. This restraint protects both peace and justice. The same discipline applies when judging yourself. Some people become their own harshest accusers. One mistake convinces them they are failures. One weakness persuades them they cannot improve. One setback becomes proof that every effort is meaningless. Such judgments are neither rational nor useful. Honest self-examination requires accuracy, not cruelty. Admit your errors completely, but never exaggerate them into permanent identities. Your mistakes deserve correction, not worship. Learn from them, improve your conduct, and continue your work. Develop the habit of questioning every fearful prediction with patient honesty. Ask whether the prediction rests upon observable facts or upon imagination. Ask whether the feared outcome would truly damage your character or merely challenge your comfort. Ask whether you are trying to control something that has never belonged to you. Each of these questions weakens fear because fear depends upon unexamined assumptions. Reason exposes what fear tries to hide. Guard carefully what you allow your attention to consume each day. A distracted mind becomes easier to disturb because it never remains with reason long enough to become steady. Constant excitement, endless comparison, and continual stimulation leave little room for thoughtful examination. Create moments of deliberate quiet. Allow your mind to settle without immediately filling every silence. A quiet mind notices its own habits more clearly. Once those habits become visible, they can finally be disciplined. When evening arrives, do not end the day without reviewing the movements of your mind. Consider where fear directed your attention away from duty. Notice which judgments proved false after the day unfolded. Observe where reason successfully interrupted panic before it became action. This practice is not meant to encourage guilt. It exists to strengthen awareness. The person who reviews his thinking honestly becomes less likely to repeat the same errors tomorrow. You will discover that genuine confidence does not come from believing nothing difficult will ever happen. Such confidence would collapse at the first serious challenge. Lasting confidence comes from trusting your ability to respond with reason, regardless of what happens. When you know that your character remains under your own guidance, uncertainty loses much of its power to frighten you. You no longer demand guarantees from the future because you have learned to trust the discipline you are building today. Do not expect this work to become effortless overnight. Habits formed through years of neglect rarely disappear after a single decision. Some thoughts will return repeatedly. Some fears will revisit familiar places in your mind. Meet each return with renewed discipline rather than discouragement. Every examination strengthens reason. Every refusal to obey a false judgment weakens fear. Every day of faithful practice builds a mind that becomes increasingly difficult to disturb. The greatest victory is not the disappearance of fearful thoughts. The greatest victory is reaching the point where fear no longer receives unquestioned authority over your choices. It may knock at the door of your mind, but it no longer enters without examination. It may present its arguments, but reason now demands evidence before granting agreement. It may suggest retreat, but virtue reminds you that courage grows only through faithful action. Your life will gradually reflect the quality of your thinking. Disciplined thoughts produce disciplined actions. Disciplined actions shape disciplined character. Disciplined character creates a peace that does not depend upon favorable circumstances. This peace cannot be purchased, inherited, or borrowed from another person. It is earned through the daily work of governing your own mind with honesty and reason. So begin now. Do not wait until fear becomes overwhelming before learning how to examine it. Train your thoughts while they are still small. Correct your judgments before they become habits. Return your attention to what reason can clearly see. Let every day become another opportunity to strengthen the ruling part of your mind. In doing so, you will discover that the greatest protection against fear has never been controlling the future. It has always been learning to govern yourself before fear ever has the chance to do it. Number 5. Choose virtue above comfort and reject every anxious impulse. Look honestly at the direction of your life. Most of your decisions are not shaped by what is right. They are shaped by what feels easier in the moment. You avoid difficult conversations because comfort whispers that silence is safer. You delay necessary work because comfort promises there will be a better time. You surrender your principles because comfort fears rejection more than dishonor. Then you wonder why your peace disappears. It disappears because you have been asking comfort to perform a task that only virtue can accomplish. Comfort can relax the body for a moment, but it cannot steady the soul. Virtue alone gives the mind a foundation that does not collapse when circumstances change. There is a quiet battle taking place within you every day. It is not a battle against the world. It is a battle between reason and impulse. Reason asks what is right. Impulse asks what is pleasant. Reason asks what strengthens character. Impulse asks what avoids discomfort. Reason thinks beyond the present feeling. Impulse demands immediate relief. Every decision you make strengthens one of these voices. If you repeatedly obey impulse, reason grows weaker through neglect. If you repeatedly obey reason, impulse gradually loses its authority. The person you become is shaped by whichever voice receives your loyalty. Many people imagine that comfort is harmless because it often appears gentle. It does not shout. It does not threaten. It simply invites you to postpone discipline until tomorrow. It encourages small compromises that seem insignificant at first. Skip today's responsibility. Ignore this weakness. Hide this truth. Avoid this challenge. Seek the easier path just this once. Yet these small choices slowly train the mind to expect ease instead of excellence. A life governed by comfort becomes increasingly fragile because it never learns how to remain steady when comfort disappears. Virtue asks something completely different from you. It does not ask whether a choice is pleasant. It asks whether it is worthy of a rational human being. It measures your life according to honesty rather than convenience. It values justice more highly than personal advantage. It places courage above temporary security. It requires self-restraint even when desire insists upon immediate satisfaction. These demands are not burdens placed upon you to make life harder. They exist because only through them can your character become dependable. Without them, your conduct changes whenever your emotions change. Anxious impulses often disguise themselves as urgent necessities. They insist that you must respond immediately. They pressure you to speak before thinking. They persuade you to escape before understanding. They tell you that relief must come now, regardless of whether your actions remain honorable. This is how fear quietly steals command of your conduct. It convinces you that immediate emotional comfort is more valuable than long-term integrity. Every time you surrender to this pressure, you strengthen anxiety's influence over your future decisions. Learn to delay your agreement with every anxious impulse. When the mind suddenly urges you toward panic, pause instead of obeying. Create a deliberate space between the appearance of the impulse and your response to it. During that brief moment, ask a simple question. Does this action strengthen my character or merely soothe my discomfort? This question changes everything because it redirects your attention from emotion toward virtue. Once reason enters the conversation, many impulses lose their apparent urgency. The greatest danger of anxiety is not the unpleasant feeling itself. The greatest danger is that anxiety persuades you to abandon your principles. It tells you to speak dishonestly because truth feels risky. It encourages avoidance because responsibility appears difficult. It recommends resentment because forgiveness demands strength. It suggests self-indulgence because discipline requires effort. Anxiety always promises immediate relief while quietly demanding payment from your character. Virtue refuses this bargain because character is worth infinitely more than temporary emotional comfort. Each morning, decide in advance what kind of person you intend to become before the day's difficulties begin presenting alternatives. Do not wait until temptation appears before considering your principles. Tell yourself that today there will be opportunities to choose convenience instead of integrity. There will be moments when impatience appears easier than patience. There will be situations where silence seems safer than honesty. Expect these moments calmly. They are not interruptions to your philosophy. They are the very circumstances that allow philosophy to become visible through action. The disciplined person does not ask whether hardship can be avoided. He asks whether hardship can be used well. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to strengthen a particular virtue. A demanding conversation becomes practice in honesty. An unfair accusation becomes practice in self-restraint. Physical fatigue becomes practice in endurance. Success becomes practice in humility. Failure becomes practice in perseverance. In this way, nothing is wasted because every circumstance offers material for character if reason remains awake. Comfort constantly teaches dependence upon favorable conditions. It convinces you that happiness requires pleasant surroundings, agreeable people, successful outcomes, and uninterrupted convenience. Such dependence places your peace entirely in the hands of fortune. Every unexpected change becomes a threat because your well-being has been attached to conditions you never truly controlled. Virtue teaches complete independence from this fragile arrangement. It reminds you that justice remains possible during conflict. Courage remains possible during uncertainty. Self-command remains possible during temptation. Wisdom remains possible regardless of external circumstances. Therefore, your deepest good remains available wherever your character remains faithful. Observe how frequently anxious impulses exaggerate what they promise to protect. They claim to preserve your reputation while encouraging dishonest behavior. They claim to protect your future while destroying your present judgment. They claim to keep you safe while making you increasingly afraid of ordinary difficulties. Fear always expands its territory when left unchallenged. What begins as avoidance of one uncomfortable situation gradually spreads into every area of life. Soon the person avoids conversations, responsibilities, opportunities, and even honest reflection because anxiety has convinced him that temporary comfort equals genuine safety. True safety does not come from arranging the world according to your preferences. Such control has never belonged to you. Real security grows from knowing that no circumstance can force you to abandon virtue without your own consent. Illness cannot command dishonesty. Financial difficulty cannot require injustice. Criticism cannot compel resentment. Loss cannot demand cowardice. External events may test your character, but they cannot replace your judgment. This realization removes much of anxiety's authority because it reveals where your true freedom actually exists. Train yourself each day through deliberate acts of self-command. Choose the more demanding path when it strengthens your character. Complete necessary work before seeking entertainment. Speak truthfully when exaggeration would benefit you. Listen patiently when irritation urges interruption. Accept correction without immediate defensiveness. Refuse unnecessary luxury when simplicity will serve equally well. These practices may appear small, yet they quietly reshape the soul. Every voluntary act of discipline teaches the mind that comfort no longer holds supreme authority. There will be times when virtue requires you to stand alone. Others may misunderstand your decisions. Some may even criticize your refusal to compromise. Do not measure your conduct by the approval of those who value convenience above character. Public agreement has never determined what is right. Your responsibility is not to satisfy every opinion. Your responsibility is to preserve the integrity of your own judgment. A peaceful conscience provides stronger companionship than widespread approval gained through compromise. Your desires also require careful examination. Not every desire deserves fulfillment simply because it appears within you. Ask whether each desire leads toward greater freedom or greater dependence. Some desires enlarge the soul because they encourage wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. Other desires quietly enslave because they increase attachment to pleasure, praise, comfort, or control. The disciplined person learns to distinguish between these two kinds of desire. He nourishes those that strengthen virtue and weakens those that encourage dependence upon changing circumstances. When anxiety urges immediate action, return your attention to the present duty instead of imagined outcomes. The anxious mind constantly rushes toward futures it cannot control. It measures success according to results that have not yet arrived. Virtue remains firmly rooted in the present because this moment alone belongs to your choice. Ask yourself what honorable action can be performed now. Perform it completely, then release concern for everything beyond your authority. Character grows through present obedience to reason rather than endless speculation about tomorrow. At the close of each day, examine not whether life felt comfortable, but whether your conduct remained worthy. Ask where convenience tempted you away from principle. Notice where fear persuaded you to hesitate unnecessarily. Recognize where you remained faithful despite discomfort. This evening examination should be calm and exact. Do not excuse weakness, yet do not condemn yourself without purpose. Every honest observation becomes material for improvement tomorrow. Character develops through consistent correction rather than emotional self-punishment. You will eventually notice an unexpected change. The things that once frightened you begin losing their power. Difficult conversations become less intimidating because truth matters more than approval. Uncertainty becomes easier to bear because your peace no longer depends upon guaranteed outcomes. Temporary discomfort becomes less threatening because you have repeatedly proven your ability to endure it without abandoning yourself. This confidence does not arise from favorable fortune. It grows from repeated evidence that virtue remains possible under every condition. The world will continue offering endless opportunities to exchange integrity for convenience. It will invite you to pursue appearances instead of substance, immediate satisfaction instead of lasting strength, emotional relief instead of disciplined judgment. Reject these invitations with quiet firmness. Every refusal strengthens the ruling part of your mind. Every faithful decision reinforces the habit of choosing what is right above what is merely pleasant. Remember that your life is being shaped long before dramatic moments appear. It is formed through ordinary choices repeated every day. The decision to remain honest when deception appears useful. The decision to remain patient when irritation feels justified. The decision to fulfill responsibilities despite fatigue. The decision to restrain unnecessary desire despite strong temptation. These quiet victories gradually create a person who can no longer be easily ruled by fear because he has learned to place virtue above comfort. Do not seek a life free from difficulty. Seek a character that remains faithful within difficulty. Do not pray that every anxious impulse disappears forever. Train yourself so thoroughly that anxious impulses no longer receive automatic obedience. Let reason become the trusted guide of your mind. Let virtue become the measure of every decision. Let comfort take its proper place as something pleasant when available, but never necessary for a good life. The person who consistently chooses virtue over comfort discovers a freedom that cannot be granted by favorable circumstances and cannot be taken away by adversity. His peace rests upon something stable because it rests upon his own disciplined character. He no longer asks each morning whether life will be easy. He asks whether he will remain just, courageous, wise, and self-controlled regardless of what the day brings. That question alone places him beyond the reach of countless unnecessary fears. Begin this work today. Refuse to make comfort your highest aim. Examine every anxious impulse before granting it authority over your conduct. Let each decision become an opportunity to strengthen the qualities that cannot be stolen by fortune. Continue returning your mind to reason until virtue becomes more familiar than fear, and integrity becomes more natural than convenience. A person who lives in this way does not escape life's challenges. He becomes the kind of person those challenges can no longer master. Number 6. Face each present moment with reason instead of imagination. Look carefully at where your mind spends most of its life. It is rarely standing where your feet are. It rushes ahead into futures that have not arrived or wanders back into moments that no longer exist. It builds conversations that have never happened. It rehearses failures that may never come. It argues with people who are not present. It relives mistakes that cannot be changed. Then it calls this activity preparation, caution, or reflection. Yet much of it is nothing more than imagination left without discipline. While your mind is occupied with shadows, the present moment passes without your full attention, and with it passes the only opportunity you ever have to choose wisely. The present moment is the only place where your character can act. Yesterday no longer belongs to your judgment. Tomorrow has not yet been entrusted to your care. Only this moment stands before you, asking for a decision. Yet the undisciplined mind treats the present as though it were merely a waiting room for some imagined future. It refuses today's duty because it is preoccupied with tomorrow's uncertainty. It neglects today's responsibility because it keeps negotiating with yesterday's regret. In doing so, it abandons the only place where virtue can actually exist. Imagination is not your enemy by nature. It becomes dangerous only when it begins replacing reason as your guide. A disciplined imagination serves wisdom by helping you prepare honestly for possible difficulties. An undisciplined imagination invents endless suffering without requiring evidence. It paints frightening pictures and demands that you respond emotionally before reality has spoken. It enlarges uncertainty until it appears greater than your own capacity for reason. The result is a person who suffers many times before a single hardship arrives. Notice how quickly imagination transforms simple events into complicated burdens. A delayed answer becomes proof that you have been rejected. A difficult assignment becomes evidence that failure is certain. A brief misunderstanding becomes the beginning of permanent conflict. None of these conclusions exist within the events themselves. They are created by a mind that has stopped observing facts and started decorating them with unnecessary fear. The event arrives plainly. Imagination covers it with invented meaning. Reason patiently removes that covering and looks again. Train yourself to distinguish between what is actually happening and what your mind is adding to it. This discipline requires honesty because imagination often disguises itself as certainty. Ask yourself, what can be directly observed without interpretation? Separate the visible fact from the story surrounding it. You may discover that the situation before you is far smaller than the one inside your thoughts. Many burdens disappear the moment they are reduced to their actual size. Reason does not deny difficulty. It simply refuses to enlarge it beyond what truth requires. Each morning, remind yourself that your greatest responsibility is not predicting the future, but using the present well. Begin the day without immediately reaching toward distant outcomes. Instead, ask yourself what duty stands nearest. Ask what honorable action can be performed within the next hour. Ask what quality of character this ordinary day invites you to strengthen. When attention settles upon the work immediately before you, the mind becomes less vulnerable to unnecessary wandering. Steadiness grows through faithful attention to what is already within reach. Your imagination often promises protection while quietly producing weakness. It convinces you that constant mental rehearsal will somehow shield you from disappointment. It encourages endless analysis until action feels impossible. It keeps searching for certainty before allowing commitment. Yet certainty has never been promised to anyone. A rational person acts according to sound judgment without demanding complete knowledge of what lies ahead. Waiting until every possibility has been eliminated means waiting forever. Life requires decisions before complete certainty arrives. Many people lose entire days because they mistake mental activity for meaningful progress. They think about acting instead of acting. They worry about speaking instead of speaking truthfully. They imagine obstacles instead of examining whether those obstacles actually exist. Their minds become busy while their character remains unchanged. Reason exposes this illusion. It asks whether your thinking has produced wiser conduct or merely greater exhaustion. If your thoughts do not lead toward virtuous action, then they deserve careful examination before receiving more of your attention. Whenever your mind begins racing toward imagined futures, gently return it to the task directly before you. If you are speaking with someone, give your full attention to listening well. If you are working, let your effort remain complete rather than divided by distant concerns. If you are resting after fulfilling your duties, allow yourself to rest without dragging tomorrow into today's quiet. This return to the present is not an escape from responsibility. It is the only way responsibility can actually be fulfilled with excellence. Reason asks different questions than imagination. Imagination asks what might go wrong. Reason asks what can be done rightly now. Imagination asks how to avoid every discomfort. Reason asks how to remain honorable through whatever discomfort arrives. Imagination seeks guarantees that life cannot provide. Reason seeks clarity about the choices that genuinely belong to you. The more often you replace the questions of imagination with the questions of reason, the more stable your inner life becomes. Be especially watchful during moments of uncertainty. Uncertainty creates empty spaces, and the undisciplined mind quickly rushes to fill those spaces with fearful invention. A delayed decision at work becomes a prediction of failure. A loved one's silence becomes imagined abandonment. A change of plans becomes a vision of permanent disorder. None of these conclusions deserve immediate belief. Let uncertainty remain uncertain until facts provide greater clarity. The wise person does not force premature conclusions simply to escape temporary discomfort. There is tremendous freedom in admitting what you do not know. Many people suffer because they insist upon pretending certainty where none exists. They confidently predict disaster while possessing no evidence beyond anxious imagination. They imprison themselves inside futures that reality has never promised. Humility releases this burden. It allows you to say that the outcome remains unknown and therefore does not deserve either panic or celebration. This honest restraint preserves energy for the work that actually belongs to you. Practice shortening the distance between thought and reality. Whenever you notice yourself constructing elaborate mental stories, pause and return to direct observation. Ask what your senses actually confirm. Ask what remains speculation. This simple habit gradually weakens the authority of imagination because it teaches the mind to respect evidence more than emotion. Truth becomes more attractive than dramatic possibility. Your conversations with other people also benefit from this discipline. How often have you assigned motives without asking honest questions? How often have you interpreted ordinary behavior according to private fears rather than observable facts? Suspicion grows easily inside an undisciplined imagination. Justice requires greater patience. Refuse to condemn another person's intentions before understanding them. A reasonable judgment waits until sufficient evidence appears. This restraint protects both your relationships and your integrity. Do not allow your imagination to borrow suffering from tomorrow. Every future difficulty will bring its own opportunity for reasoned action when it arrives. You do not strengthen yourself by carrying tomorrow's burdens today. You only weaken your ability to meet today's responsibilities. Trust that when future challenges become present realities, your capacity for judgment will stand ready if you continue training it faithfully now. Strength is developed through present discipline, not through endless anticipation. The ordinary moments of life provide the greatest opportunities for this practice. Standing in line, completing routine work, preparing a meal, walking through familiar streets, listening to another person, these moments appear too small to matter. Yet this is where attention is either strengthened or scattered. A distracted life is not created through dramatic failures. It is created through countless unnoticed moments when imagination quietly steals the mind away from reality. Recover these moments and you recover much of your life. Develop the habit of asking yourself throughout the day where your attention currently rests. Is it serving the present duty or wandering toward imagined events? Is it occupied with something within your authority or something forever beyond it? These questions interrupt mental drift before it grows stronger. They gently return the ruling part of the mind to its proper place. Repeated often enough, this becomes a stable habit rather than an occasional exercise. When evening arrives, review not only what you accomplished, but also where your imagination carried you unnecessarily. Notice the situations that never became as frightening as your mind predicted. Observe how many anxious expectations dissolved without becoming reality. Learn from these observations instead of forgetting them. They reveal an important truth. Much of the suffering you feared existed only within imagination. Each honest review strengthens your trust in reason and weakens your willingness to obey unfounded predictions. You may wonder whether living this way removes all emotion from life. It does not. It simply refuses to let emotion rule where judgment should lead. Joy becomes cleaner because it no longer depends entirely upon imagined perfection. Sorrow becomes more bearable because it is no longer multiplied by unnecessary interpretation. Courage becomes possible because the mind remains anchored in what is actually required rather than overwhelmed by countless possibilities. Reason does not impoverish life. It purifies it. Remember that every impression asking for your attention deserves examination before agreement. Not every possibility deserves equal consideration. Not every fearful image deserves belief. Not every prediction deserves emotional investment. Guard the entrance to your mind with the same care that a wise guardian protects a valuable city. Allow truth to enter freely. Require imagination to present evidence before granting it influence. This discipline preserves inner order even while the world around you remains uncertain. The person who continually returns to the present discovers something remarkable. Ordinary moments begin carrying unexpected dignity. Washing a cup becomes an opportunity for careful attention. Speaking honestly becomes an opportunity for justice. Finishing difficult work becomes an opportunity for perseverance. Listening patiently becomes an opportunity for self-command. Life no longer feels like endless waiting for some future achievement, because every present action becomes meaningful through virtue. Do not measure today according to how many fears your imagination created. Measure it according to how often reason quietly guided your choices. Success is found each time you refuse to exaggerate uncertainty. Success is found each time you replace speculation with observation. Success is found each time you bring your wandering attention back to the duty standing directly before you. These victories may appear small, yet together they reshape the entire direction of your character. The mind that lives under imagination becomes restless because it constantly pursues places where it cannot act. The mind governed by reason becomes steady because it remains where choice is actually possible. There is profound freedom in no longer chasing every frightening possibility that appears before you. There is quiet strength in accepting that reality deserves your attention while imagination deserves your examination. Begin practicing this discipline with your very next thought. When your mind reaches beyond the present, searching for imagined troubles, notice it without anger. Bring it back with patience. Let reason ask what is true, what is useful, and what belongs to your responsibility right now. Then devote yourself fully to that answer. Continue this practice every day until your attention naturally rests where your life is truly being lived. In that place, fear loses much of its influence because imagination no longer rules the mind. Reason quietly takes its rightful place, and the present moment becomes enough for the work of a good and disciplined life. Number 7. Examine every worry until false beliefs lose their power. Every worry carries a hidden belief. Until you uncover that belief, your mind will continue producing the same fear under different names. You may think you are worried about money, your health, your work, your relationships, or your future, yet beneath each concern lies a judgment that has escaped examination. The worry is only the surface. The belief beneath it is the true source of your unrest. If you spend your life fighting worries while refusing to question the beliefs that create them, you will cut away branches while leaving the root untouched. A disciplined mind does not merely silence anxious thoughts, it investigates them until truth replaces illusion. Your mind is constantly making claims about the world. It says you cannot endure loss. It says you must be admired to have worth. It says uncertainty is dangerous. It says failure destroys your value. It says comfort is necessary for peace. These claims are rarely spoken aloud, yet they quietly direct your choices every day. You arrange your life around them without asking whether they deserve your trust. This is how false beliefs become invisible rulers. They no longer need to argue because you have already accepted them as facts. The first responsibility of a rational person is not to believe everything that appears convincing. Your responsibility is to examine every judgment before allowing it to shape your conduct. Worry demands immediate agreement. Reason demands careful inspection. When anxiety presents its argument, do not answer it with panic or denial. Answer it with questions. Ask what belief is producing this fear. Ask whether that belief depends upon reality or upon habit. Ask whether it strengthens your character or weakens it. A belief that cannot withstand honest examination deserves to lose its place within your mind. Many people spend years trying to remove uncomfortable emotions while protecting the false beliefs that create them. They want peace without changing their judgments. They want courage while continuing to believe that hardship is unbearable. They want freedom while remaining attached to the approval of others. Such efforts will always fail because emotion faithfully follows belief. Change the belief and the emotional life gradually changes with it. Protect the belief and the same disturbances will continue returning in different forms. When a worry appears, refuse to let it remain vague. Vague fears possess more power than clearly examined ones. Bring the worry into the light by giving it precise words. Ask yourself exactly what you fear. Continue asking until the answer becomes completely honest. You may begin by saying that you fear failure. Continue further. Perhaps you believe failure makes you unworthy. Ask again, why would that be true? Eventually you will arrive at a belief that has quietly directed your life for years without ever being challenged. That discovery is the beginning of genuine freedom. False beliefs survive through neglect. They prefer darkness because they cannot withstand sustained attention from reason. Imagine holding one of your deepest assumptions before the clear light of careful examination. Does it truly deserve your loyalty? Does it agree with the demands of virtue? Does it concern something within your authority or something forever outside your command? If the belief depends upon controlling fortune, public opinion, or uncertain outcomes, then it rests upon unstable ground. A wise person refuses to build inner peace upon foundations that belong to chance. Each morning, prepare yourself for this work before the world begins demanding your attention. Sit quietly and ask which beliefs most often disturb your peace. Do not focus first upon external events. Look instead at the judgments hidden beneath them. Perhaps you believe that every mistake must be avoided. Perhaps you believe that criticism is unbearable. Perhaps you believe that happiness depends upon constant success. Write these beliefs plainly. Seeing them clearly weakens their influence because they are no longer hidden beneath emotional confusion. Throughout the day, become a careful observer of your own mind. Whenever anxiety begins rising, resist the urge to chase the emotion itself. Instead, trace it backward toward its source. Every emotion leaves footprints leading to a judgment. Follow those footprints patiently. You may discover that your fear has very little to do with the event itself. It may have everything to do with an old belief you have never questioned. Once the source becomes visible, your effort can finally be directed where it truly belongs. Many false beliefs disguise themselves as common sense because they have been repeated for so many years. You may believe that everyone must understand you before you can remain peaceful. You may believe that every plan must succeed before your efforts have value. You may believe that every uncomfortable feeling signals danger. These ideas often sound reasonable because they have become familiar. Familiarity, however, does not create truth. A disciplined mind measures every belief against reason rather than repetition. One of the most damaging beliefs is the assumption that external events possess the power to determine your inner condition. This belief quietly removes responsibility from your own judgment and hands it to fortune. Once accepted, every disappointment appears capable of stealing your peace. Every unexpected event becomes a personal threat. Yet your character has never depended upon external arrangements. Justice remains possible during unfair treatment. Courage remains possible during uncertainty. Self-restraint remains possible during temptation. Wisdom remains possible during confusion. Your deepest good has always remained within your own moral purpose, rather than within changing circumstances. Learn to question every belief that demands perfection from life. Such beliefs produce endless dissatisfaction because reality refuses to obey them. The mind says people should never disappoint me. Circumstances should always unfold according to my plans. My efforts should always receive recognition. My future should remain predictable. These expectations create suffering, not because reality is cruel, but because the beliefs themselves are unreasonable. Replace them with beliefs that agree with the nature of life. People will sometimes fail you. Plans will change. Recognition may or may not arrive. The future remains uncertain. None of these truths prevent you from acting with virtue today. Your daily conversations reveal many of the beliefs governing your mind. Listen carefully to the language you use when speaking about yourself and your circumstances. Notice whenever you say you cannot endure something. Notice whenever you insist that happiness depends upon a particular outcome. Notice whenever you claim that another person's behavior determines your peace. These statements deserve immediate examination because they reveal where false beliefs continue exercising authority over your thinking. There is great strength in learning to remain with a difficult question instead of rushing toward comforting answers. When a belief begins collapsing under examination, your mind may feel temporarily unsettled. Do not escape too quickly. Stay with the discomfort long enough for reason to complete its work. The loss of a false belief often feels uncomfortable because part of your identity had become attached to it. Yet what is false must be surrendered if what is true is to take its place. This temporary uncertainty is the price of genuine clarity. Practice replacing false beliefs with judgments rooted in reason rather than wishful thinking. Instead of believing that your worth depends upon success, remind yourself that your worth depends upon the quality of your character. Instead of believing that uncertainty must be eliminated, accept that uncertainty simply provides another opportunity for wise judgment. Instead of believing that hardship prevents a good life, recognize that hardship often reveals whether your principles are genuine. These new judgments must be practiced repeatedly until they become more familiar than the old ones they replace. Your relationships improve when false beliefs lose their influence. You stop expecting other people to satisfy needs that belong within your own discipline. You stop interpreting every disagreement as rejection. You stop demanding constant reassurance because your peace no longer depends upon another person's approval. This does not make you distant or cold. It makes you more just because you begin seeing others according to reality rather than through the distortions created by hidden fears. Do not become discouraged when old beliefs return. They were strengthened through years of repetition and will not disappear after a single examination. Meet each return with patience rather than frustration. Every time you question a false belief, instead of automatically accepting it, you weaken its authority. Every time you choose reason instead of habit, you strengthen the ruling part of your mind. Progress is measured by increasing honesty, not by immediate perfection. At the end of each day, perform a careful review of the worries that appeared. Ask which beliefs produced them. Notice whether those beliefs survived honest examination or whether they weakened under the light of reason. Record your discoveries if necessary. This evening practice gradually teaches the mind to recognize false judgments more quickly. What once controlled you without resistance will eventually be recognized before it gains momentum. One of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming that peace comes from arranging life according to their preferences. Real peace comes from arranging your judgments according to truth. Preferences will always collide with reality because life remains beyond complete control. Truth, however, remains available regardless of changing circumstances. When your beliefs become aligned with reality instead of desire, worry loses much of the ground upon which it once stood. Remember that every false belief asks you to surrender responsibility for your inner life. It tells you that peace depends upon something outside your own judgment. Reason quietly refuses this surrender. It insists that your conduct, your integrity, your honesty, your justice, and your self-command remain within your authority regardless of external conditions. This conviction becomes a stable foundation because it rests upon something no circumstance can remove without your own consent. There will always be occasions when new worries appear. Do not fear their arrival. Welcome them as opportunities to discover beliefs that still require examination. Every worry becomes a teacher if approached with disciplined curiosity instead of immediate resistance. Instead of asking how to escape the feeling, ask what judgment created it. Instead of blaming circumstances, investigate the belief standing behind your reaction. In this way, every disturbance becomes material for inner refinement. As your false beliefs gradually lose their power, you will notice a profound change within yourself. Situations that once produced immediate anxiety will begin meeting a calmer mind. Delays will no longer feel like personal attacks. Uncertainty will no longer demand endless prediction. Criticism will no longer threaten your identity. Success will no longer become necessary for self-respect. The outer world may remain unpredictable, but your inner life will become increasingly ordered because it rests upon examined judgments rather than inherited assumptions. The disciplined person does not seek a life without challenges. He seeks a mind that cannot be easily deceived. He understands that every fear deserves investigation before obedience. He knows that every belief must answer to reason before it receives authority. He refuses to let habit, emotion, or public opinion decide the direction of his soul. Instead, he patiently examines each worry until the false belief beneath it can no longer survive the presence of truth. Begin this practice today with the very next anxious thought that enters your mind. Do not push it away and do not immediately believe it. Invite it before the court of reason. Ask what belief it carries. Test that belief honestly. Keep questioning until only truth remains. Then build your conduct upon that truth rather than upon fear. Continue this work faithfully every day. In time you will discover that your greatest freedom does not come from eliminating every challenge. It comes from refusing to let false beliefs govern the life that reason was always meant to lead. Number 8. Practice voluntary hardship and weaken fear through steady discipline. Look honestly at the habits that now govern your life. Many of them were not chosen by reason. They were chosen by the constant search for ease. You reach for comfort before you have even asked whether comfort deserves to lead you. You avoid effort because effort feels unpleasant. You resist inconvenience because your mind has quietly accepted the belief that a good life should always feel comfortable. Yet every time comfort becomes your highest priority, your character becomes more dependent upon conditions that can disappear without warning. A person who cannot endure small discomforts willingly will eventually be overwhelmed by greater hardships that arrive without permission. Fear grows strongest inside a life that has never practiced endurance. The mind begins imagining that every inconvenience is unbearable because it has never tested its own strength. It mistakes unfamiliar difficulty for impossible difficulty. It believes that comfort is necessary because it has forgotten how much it can actually endure. This is why deliberate hardship has such profound value. It is not punishment, it is training. It reminds you that your character possesses greater resilience than your habits have allowed you to discover. Many people wait for adversity to teach them courage. By then they have already surrendered years of preparation. A disciplined person does not leave the development of character to chance. He trains before necessity demands it. He willingly accepts manageable difficulties so that unexpected hardships no longer appear impossible. This is not an attempt to control the future. It is an effort to strengthen the one thing that truly belongs to him, his own capacity for wise and honorable action. Consider how often your decisions are influenced by the simple desire to avoid discomfort. You remain silent when truth should be spoken because honesty feels difficult. You delay meaningful work because beginning requires effort. You abandon commitments because persistence becomes uncomfortable. You seek distraction because quiet reflection exposes weaknesses you would rather ignore. None of these choices appear dramatic in isolation, yet repeated over months and years they quietly reshape your character until comfort becomes your ruler and discipline becomes a stranger. Voluntary hardship reverses this process. It teaches the mind that discomfort does not deserve automatic obedience. Choose small acts of discipline each day that require no audience and earn no applause. Rise when your body asks for unnecessary delay. Complete your responsibilities before seeking pleasure. Accept temporary inconvenience without complaint. Walk when convenience tempts unnecessary dependence. Eat with moderation even when excess remains available. These actions appear ordinary, yet each one strengthens the ruling part of your mind. The purpose of these practices is never self-punishment. A rational person does not seek suffering for its own sake. The purpose is to weaken the false belief that comfort determines happiness. Every voluntary inconvenience becomes evidence that your peace survives without constant ease. Your mind slowly learns that it can remain steady even when familiar pleasures are absent. This lesson cannot be learned through theory alone. It must be experienced through repeated action. Fear often exaggerates what discomfort will feel like. Before beginning a difficult task, your imagination predicts exhaustion, frustration, embarrassment, or failure. Yet once you begin, reality frequently proves more manageable than the fearful picture your mind created. Every time you willingly face moderate difficulty, you expose another exaggeration produced by fear. This repeated discovery gradually weakens fear because it loses credibility in the presence of direct experience. Begin each morning by preparing yourself for disciplined effort rather than pleasant circumstances. Do not ask whether the day will unfold according to your preferences. Ask whether you are prepared to meet whatever arrives with patience, justice, courage, and self-command. Expect interruptions without resentment. Expect unexpected responsibilities without complaint. Expect moments requiring restraint instead of impulse. Preparation of this kind creates stability because your expectations become aligned with the true nature of life rather than with comforting fantasies. One of the greatest forms of voluntary hardship is the discipline of remaining silent when unnecessary words promise temporary satisfaction. You may feel the impulse to defend yourself immediately, to answer every criticism, or to win every disagreement. Yet restraint often strengthens character more than argument. Silence practiced wisely teaches mastery over impulse. It reminds you that not every emotional reaction deserves expression. The ability to remain composed during provocation is evidence of inner freedom. Practice reducing unnecessary dependence upon luxury. Enjoy what life offers with gratitude, but never allow your peace to depend upon abundance. Occasionally choose simplicity, even when greater comfort remains available. Eat a plain meal without resentment. Wear ordinary clothing without concern for appearance. Accept inconvenience without immediately seeking escape. These practices quietly loosen the chains binding your happiness to external conditions. They teach the mind that contentment belongs to character rather than possessions. Your work also provides opportunities for voluntary discipline. Complete difficult tasks before easier ones. Resist the temptation to postpone responsibilities that deserve immediate attention. Continue your effort even when enthusiasm fades. Character is not strengthened by occasional bursts of motivation. It is strengthened through faithful action performed regardless of changing emotions. Discipline becomes trustworthy precisely because it does not wait for favorable feelings before fulfilling necessary duties. Notice how quickly fear loses influence when action replaces hesitation. Many anxieties survive only because they remain untested. The mind imagines endless obstacles while standing still. Once movement begins, reality replaces speculation. A difficult conversation becomes clearer once it starts. A demanding project becomes manageable through steady progress. An unfamiliar challenge becomes less frightening after the first deliberate step. Fear often depends upon delay. Discipline interrupts that delay through immediate and reasonable action. There will be moments when your body and emotions both urge retreat. Listen carefully before obeying them. Neither physical comfort nor emotional preference possesses final authority over your conduct. Ask whether withdrawal serves wisdom or merely protects convenience. Sometimes rest is necessary because reason recognizes genuine limits. At other times, the desire to stop comes from habit rather than necessity. Learning to distinguish between these two conditions is part of mature self-government. Voluntary hardship also strengthens gratitude. When every comfort becomes expected, appreciation quietly disappears. Simplicity restores perspective. A modest meal becomes sufficient. Shelter becomes meaningful. Friendship becomes precious. Ordinary health becomes remarkable. Gratitude grows not because circumstances improve, but because unnecessary expectations diminish. The disciplined person receives life's ordinary blessings with greater appreciation because he has learned they are gifts rather than guarantees. Guard yourself against performing difficult acts merely to impress others. Discipline pursued for admiration remains dependent upon public opinion. Such effort strengthens vanity instead of character. The most valuable practices often remain completely unseen. No audience observes your decision to remain patient. No applause accompanies your refusal to complain. No recognition follows your quiet endurance of inconvenience. Yet these unseen victories shape the soul more deeply than public achievements, because they are performed for the sake of virtue alone. When unexpected hardship eventually arrives, as it surely will, you will discover that your previous discipline has prepared you well. The person who has willingly practiced self-restraint is less shaken by sudden loss. The person who has accepted ordinary discomfort calmly is less frightened by demanding circumstances. The person who has repeatedly chosen duty above ease does not suddenly become courageous during adversity. He reveals the courage that daily discipline has already cultivated. Do not measure your progress according to whether life becomes easier. Measure it according to whether your dependence upon comfort becomes weaker. You are growing whenever inconvenience no longer produces immediate complaint. You are growing whenever difficult responsibilities receive prompt attention instead of endless delay. You are growing whenever fear loses its ability to persuade you that temporary discomfort should determine permanent decisions. Each evening, review the ways you responded to discomfort throughout the day. Notice where convenience quietly influenced your choices. Observe where you remained faithful despite resistance from your emotions. Do not exaggerate either your successes or your failures. Honest examination exists to strengthen tomorrow's discipline rather than to encourage pride or discouragement. Every day becomes another opportunity to refine your character through clearer judgment. Many people search endlessly for confidence without understanding where confidence is formed. Genuine confidence does not arise from repeated success or constant praise. It grows from repeated evidence that you can trust yourself to act according to reason, even when conditions become difficult. Every voluntary hardship completed with integrity becomes proof that your character remains stronger than passing discomfort. This quiet evidence gradually replaces fragile self-esteem with stable self-respect. Refuse to believe that your greatest enemy is difficulty. Your greatest enemy is the habit of surrendering to every impulse that promises immediate relief. Difficulty often serves as an honest teacher because it reveals where your discipline remains incomplete. Welcome these lessons without resentment. They expose weaknesses while there is still time to strengthen them. A person who avoids every challenge also avoids many opportunities for growth. Remember that no external hardship can damage the deepest part of you unless your own judgment cooperates with it. Pain may visit the body, loss may affect possessions, criticism may reach your ears. None of these events possesses the authority to corrupt your character. Only your own choices determine whether justice, courage, moderation, and wisdom remain present. This understanding transforms hardship from an enemy into material for virtue. As your discipline becomes steadier, fear begins losing the foundation upon which it once depended. Fear repeatedly tells you that you cannot endure what lies ahead. Voluntary hardship quietly answers with evidence gathered through experience. It reminds you of every difficult task already completed. It reminds you of every temptation resisted. It reminds you of every inconvenience accepted without complaint. These memories become witnesses against fear's exaggerations. You will eventually notice that freedom feels different from comfort. Comfort depends upon circumstances remaining favorable. Freedom depends upon your ability to remain governed by reason regardless of circumstances. One disappears whenever fortune changes. The other becomes stronger each time discipline chooses principle above pleasure. This freedom cannot be purchased or inherited. It is earned through countless ordinary decisions made faithfully over time. Do not postpone this training while waiting for a more convenient season. The habit of delay strengthens the very weakness you seek to overcome. Begin with whatever opportunity stands before you today. Accept one unnecessary comfort less than yesterday. Complete one difficult responsibility without complaint. Endure one inconvenience with calm attention instead of resistance. Speak one difficult truth with honesty and respect. These small acts accumulate quietly until discipline becomes your natural response rather than an occasional effort. Continue this practice with patience and consistency. Do not seek dramatic transformation overnight. Character grows through repeated obedience to reason in ordinary moments. Every willing encounter with manageable hardship weakens the illusion that comfort is essential for peace. Every disciplined choice prepares you for future challenges without requiring you to fear them in advance. In time, you will discover that the greatest reward of voluntary hardship is not becoming indifferent to difficulty. It is becoming the kind of person who remains faithful to virtue whether life offers ease or demands endurance. Number 9. Remember death daily and value this present opportunity wisely. You live as though time has promised to return tomorrow. That assumption quietly governs countless decisions without ever announcing itself. You postpone necessary conversations because you believe another opportunity will appear. You delay the work that would strengthen your character because you imagine there will always be another morning. You allow resentment to remain because reconciliation can wait. You excuse your weaknesses because change feels easier to postpone than to begin. Yet none of these assumptions has ever been guaranteed. The greatest illusion is not that life is difficult. The greatest illusion is believing that your supply of days belongs to you rather than being temporarily entrusted to you. Remembering death is not an invitation to sadness, it is an invitation to clarity. It strips away excuses that seem convincing only when time appears endless. When you understand that every sunrise could be among your last, many unnecessary concerns immediately lose their importance. Petty arguments become too small to deserve your energy. Endless comparison appears empty. The desire to impress strangers becomes insignificant. The pursuit of virtue suddenly becomes urgent because it is the only possession that remains entirely within your authority while life continues. Most people avoid thinking about death because they believe the subject steals joy. The opposite is true. It is forgetfulness that steals joy. When you imagine that life stretches endlessly before you, ordinary moments lose their value. You stop noticing the privilege of another conversation, another meal, another chance to improve your conduct. Gratitude weakens because abundance has become expected. Remembering mortality restores appreciation because it reminds you that every ordinary moment is temporary and therefore worthy of careful attention. The fear of death often disguises itself as attachment to everything that can be lost. People cling desperately to praise because they forget that reputation ends with time. They cling to possessions because they mistake ownership for permanence. They cling to comfort because they hope convenience will somehow protect them from the nature of life. Yet nothing external has ever been promised forever. The rational person does not waste energy demanding permanence from what has always been temporary. Instead, he directs his effort toward the quality of his own character, which remains the only true measure of a life well lived. Ask yourself a difficult question at the beginning of each day. If this were your final opportunity to choose your conduct, would you live differently than you intend to live today? Do not answer quickly. Allow the question to expose the habits you have accepted without examination. If your first instinct is to postpone what matters most, then you have discovered where your priorities require correction. Death does not create urgency. It reveals whether urgency should already have been present. Many worries become much smaller when viewed through the certainty that life itself is limited. The criticism that kept you awake loses much of its influence. The inconvenience that filled you with frustration no longer deserves such authority. The delay that seemed unbearable becomes only a brief interruption within a much larger journey. This perspective does not encourage carelessness, it encourages proportion. It teaches the mind to distinguish between what merely demands attention and what truly deserves devotion. Your greatest mistake is not making occasional errors. Your greatest mistake is believing that endless opportunities exist to correct them. Every day that passes without honest effort becomes part of a life that cannot be reclaimed. This truth should not produce despair. It should awaken responsibility. The value of today increases precisely because it cannot be repeated. You are not being asked to control the length of your life. You are being asked to govern the quality of the life that remains available now. Morning is the proper time to remember the uncertainty of your remaining days. Before entering the demands of work, conversation, and obligation, remind yourself that this day has not been guaranteed by any promise beyond the present moment. Let this awareness sharpen your attention rather than weaken your spirit. Decide that if today proves to be your final opportunity, your words will be honest, your actions just, your judgments reasonable, and your conduct worthy of respect. Such preparation transforms ordinary hours into opportunities for deliberate virtue. Do not mistake this practice for gloomy reflection. A mind that calmly accepts mortality becomes lighter rather than heavier. It no longer wastes enormous energy resisting realities that have never been within human control. Instead of arguing with the nature of life, it begins cooperating with it. Peace grows wherever resistance to unavoidable truth comes to an end. Acceptance does not diminish love for life. It deepens it because every experience is received as something precious rather than permanent. Examine how much of your day is consumed by matters that would appear insignificant if you remembered the limits of time. How many conversations revolve around complaints that produce no improvement? How many hours disappear through meaningless distraction? How many resentments remain alive long after they have stopped serving any useful purpose? Mortality exposes these habits with remarkable honesty. It asks whether they deserve a place inside a life that is already passing more quickly than you realize. The certainty of death also teaches humility. No achievement can exempt you from the conditions shared by every human being. Wealth cannot purchase another guarantee. Fame cannot negotiate another season. Power cannot command another sunrise. Remembering this truth prevents pride from taking root, because it reminds you that every person stands equally before the limits established by nature. The only lasting distinction lies in the quality of one's character, not in the quantity of one's possessions or recognition. When someone treats you unfairly, remember that both your lives are passing. This thought does not excuse injustice, but it weakens the temptation toward lasting bitterness. Why carry resentment through days that are already limited? Why surrender peace over conflicts that time itself will eventually erase? Respond with justice where justice is required. Correct what belongs within your responsibility, then release what no longer deserves your attention. Time is too valuable to spend feeding anger that produces neither wisdom nor virtue. The awareness of mortality also changes how you approach your responsibilities. You stop performing them carelessly because you understand that each task represents a portion of life itself. Work completed with integrity becomes an expression of character rather than a burden to escape. Conversations become opportunities to practice patience. Challenges become opportunities to strengthen courage. Every ordinary action gains dignity because it occupies time that will never return. Do not wait for dramatic events before choosing to improve yourself. Many people imagine that transformation begins after some extraordinary experience. They promise themselves that next month they will become more disciplined. Next year they will become more honest. Someday they will devote themselves fully to wisdom. Yet the habit of postponement quietly continues unchanged. The disciplined person understands that the proper time for virtue has always been the present moment because the future remains uncertain. Practice ending each evening with a simple examination. Ask yourself whether you used the day as though it possessed genuine value. Consider whether your attention remained directed toward what truly mattered. Notice where trivial concerns occupied time that could have strengthened your character. Observe where fear persuaded you to delay necessary action. This review is not an exercise in regret. It is an opportunity to greet tomorrow with greater clarity if tomorrow is granted. Your attachment to endless possibility often prevents wholehearted action. You keep searching for the perfect opportunity instead of using the opportunity already before you. You wait for complete confidence before speaking truthfully. You wait for ideal conditions before fulfilling your responsibilities. You wait for certainty before committing yourself to meaningful work. Yet life rarely unfolds according to perfect conditions. Remembering death teaches you to value the imperfect opportunity that exists now, rather than the imaginary perfection that never arrives. When fear tells you to postpone courage, remember that delay quietly consumes the very time required to become courageous. When laziness urges another day of neglect, remember that neglected days eventually become neglected years. When pride encourages unnecessary conflict, remember that neither victory nor defeat will prevent life's final boundary. These reflections do not encourage haste without wisdom. They encourage deliberate action guided by reason rather than endless postponement. There is a remarkable freedom in accepting that your control has always been limited. You cannot command another year. You cannot guarantee another conversation. You cannot preserve every relationship forever. You cannot prevent every loss. Yet you remain capable of choosing honesty today. You remain capable of acting justly today. You remain capable of showing restraint today. You remain capable of strengthening wisdom today. These opportunities belong entirely to your own judgment, while this moment remains available. As this understanding deepens, many anxious ambitions quietly fade. You stop measuring your worth according to achievements that time will eventually erase. You become less interested in collecting admiration and more interested in cultivating integrity. Success becomes something measured by the quality of your choices rather than by the applause they receive. This shift creates remarkable stability because your peace no longer depends upon circumstances that continually change. The person who remembers death wisely does not become detached from life. He becomes fully engaged with it. He listens more carefully because every conversation may never be repeated. He forgives more readily because resentment wastes precious time. He works more faithfully because every task becomes an opportunity to express virtue. He loves more honestly because affection delayed without reason may never find another occasion for expression. Mortality does not reduce commitment to life. It removes everything that distracts from living it well. Do not allow another day to pass under the false promise that unlimited time remains ahead of you. Let each sunrise remind you that life is measured not only by its length, but by the integrity with which it is lived. Let each challenge remind you that character can still be strengthened. Let each ordinary moment remind you that greatness is formed through faithful attention to present duties rather than through dreams about distant futures. One day your final evening will arrive, whether expected or unexpected. When that moment comes, external success will offer little comfort if your character has been neglected. Titles will not speak on your behalf. Possessions will not defend your choices. Public praise will not replace a life spent without discipline. Only the condition of your own soul will remain as the true record of how you used the opportunities entrusted to you. Live now in such a way that whenever that final day appears, you have no need to regret a life wasted on trivial pursuits. Begin this practice before the day ends. Do not merely remember that death is certain. Remember that because death is certain, this present hour possesses extraordinary value. Use it to correct one fault. Use it to fulfill one neglected duty. Use it to speak one honest word. Use it to strengthen one virtue that fortune cannot take away. Continue living in this manner each day. You will discover that the awareness of life's limits does not imprison the soul. It frees the soul to devote itself completely to what has always mattered most. Number 10. Live according to reason and discover unshakable inner freedom. You have been living inside judgments that you rarely question. Every frustration, every anxiety, every complaint begins not with the world, but with the way you interpret the world. You do not suffer because reality is always harsh. You suffer because your mind repeatedly adds conclusions that reason never approved. You call these reactions natural, but what is natural is to observe, to think, and to choose. What is not natural is to accept every passing impression as truth without examination. When you stop questioning your judgments, you stop governing your life. And when you stop governing your life, everything outside you begins to govern it instead. Reason is not something you occasionally use when life becomes difficult. Reason is the ruling principle of a human mind that wishes to remain free. To live according to reason is to refuse automatic obedience to impulse, fear, anger, or desire. It is to pause before agreeing with any inner voice that has not been examined. Most people believe they are thinking when they are only reacting. A reaction is fast, emotional, and untested. Thinking is slow enough to ask whether the impression deserves belief. Freedom begins at the moment you create distance between what appears in your mind and what you choose to accept as true. Look closely at your daily suffering. Much of it comes from treating your first impression as final truth. Someone speaks sharply and you immediately conclude disrespect. A plan changes and you immediately conclude misfortune. A delay appears and you immediately conclude failure. These conclusions feel automatic, but they are not inevitable. Between the event and your response lies a space where reason can enter. That space is where your freedom has always lived. The problem is not that life produces impressions. The problem is that you rarely pause long enough to examine them. When you live without examining your judgments, you surrender your inner authority to whatever thought arrives first. Fear becomes your advisor. Anger becomes your judge. Anxiety becomes your interpreter of reality. None of these forces care about truth. They care only about immediate relief or immediate reaction. Reason, however, asks a different question. It asks what is actually happening rather than what it feels like might be happening. It asks what belongs to your control and what does not. It asks what response strengthens your character rather than what response protects your comfort. Begin your practice each morning by reminding yourself that impressions will arrive without permission. You will hear opinions, encounter difficulties, and experience unexpected changes. None of this is under your control. What is under your control is whether you accept these impressions blindly or examine them carefully. Decide in advance that you will not rush to judgment. Decide that every strong emotional reaction will be paused long enough for reason to question it. This single decision, repeated daily, is the beginning of inner independence. Throughout the day, notice how quickly your mind tries to conclude before it understands. Someone cuts you off in conversation, and your mind instantly writes a story about disrespect. A task becomes difficult, and your mind instantly declares it unbearable. A moment of silence appears, and your mind instantly fills it with worry. These rapid conclusions feel like truth because they arrive before reflection. Yet speed has never been a measure of accuracy. The disciplined mind learns to distrust what appears instantly certain. To live according to reason is to train yourself to ask simple but powerful questions before reacting. What exactly is happening here without interpretation? What part of this is within my control? What part belongs to external events or other people? What response would preserve justice, patience, and self-command? These questions do not remove difficulty from life. They remove confusion from your response. A clear mind can act effectively even in uncertain conditions. A confused mind reacts poorly even in simple conditions. Much of your emotional instability comes from blending what you control with what you do not. You treat other people's opinions as if they determine your worth. You treat external outcomes as if they define your success. You treat temporary discomfort as if it defines your capacity. This confusion creates unnecessary suffering because it places your peace in areas that have never belonged to you. Reason restores order by separating ownership from illusion. Your judgments, your choices, your intentions, your character belong to you. Everything else does not. When you accept this separation fully, life becomes lighter, not because it becomes easier, but because it becomes clearer. You stop wasting energy trying to manage what was never yours to manage. You stop negotiating with events that do not require your permission. You begin directing your attention toward the only area where meaningful change is possible, your own response. This shift is not detachment from life. It is precise engagement with what truly matters. Many people believe freedom means getting what they want. This belief is fragile because it depends on external conditions aligning perfectly with desire. True freedom is different. It is the ability to remain governed by reason regardless of what you receive or lose. It is the capacity to choose your response without being controlled by emotional disturbance. A person who has cultivated this ability cannot be easily manipulated by praise, criticism, gain, or loss, because his center of control has been correctly placed within himself. Examine how often your judgments are shaped by the desire to avoid discomfort rather than by the pursuit of truth. You may soften your opinions to gain approval. You may exaggerate your concerns to justify avoidance. You may delay decisions because clarity would require responsibility. These patterns weaken reason because they train the mind to prioritize emotional relief over honest perception. A disciplined mind refuses this compromise. It chooses accuracy even when accuracy feels inconvenient. The practice of living according to reason requires daily correction. You will not achieve perfect judgment in a single moment of insight. Instead, you will repeatedly notice where emotion has overridden careful thinking. Each time this happens, do not react with frustration. Simply return to examination. Ask again what is actually true. Ask again what belongs to your control. Ask again what response reflects virtue. This repetition is not failure, it is training. As you strengthen this habit, you will begin to notice a gradual shift. Events that once triggered immediate emotional disturbance will begin to feel less controlling. You will still feel emotions, but they will no longer dictate your choices without challenge. You will experience impulses, but you will no longer treat them as commands. You will observe thoughts without immediately obeying them. This is the beginning of inner freedom, the ability to witness mental activity without surrendering authority to it. Do not expect this process to remove all difficulty from your life. Reason does not promise a life without disturbance. It promises a mind that remains steady within disturbance. External events will continue to shift. People will continue to act unpredictably. Outcomes will continue to vary. Yet none of these changes require the collapse of your inner order. The stability of your life depends not on controlling events, but on maintaining clarity in your response to them. One of the clearest signs that you are living according to reason is the reduction of unnecessary complaint. Complaint arises when the mind believes that reality should conform to personal preference. Reason understands that reality operates independently of preference. Instead of complaining, reason asks what is possible now. Instead of resisting what cannot be changed, reason directs attention toward what can still be done with integrity. This shift transforms frustration into action and confusion into clarity. Another sign of progress is the ability to delay reaction. Where you once responded instantly to emotional disturbance, you now pause. In that pause, reason has space to speak. This pause may feel small, but it is the birthplace of freedom. Without it, you are governed by impulse. With it, you regain authority over your responses. The entire discipline of inner freedom rests upon the cultivation of this moment of interruption between impression and action. You will also notice that your sense of identity begins to stabilize. When your judgments are unexamined, your identity changes with every emotion and circumstance. You feel strong when praised and weak when criticized. You feel confident when things go well and lost when they do not. But when reason governs your judgments, your identity becomes anchored in your character rather than in fluctuating conditions. You begin to define yourself by how well you think and act, rather than by how circumstances unfold. Even in difficult moments, reason provides a quiet strength. It does not deny pain or difficulty. It simply refuses to exaggerate them. It asks what is truly required here rather than what fear claims is required. It reminds you that suffering is increased not only by events, but by the interpretations you attach to them. When interpretation becomes disciplined, suffering loses much of its unnecessary weight. The practice of living according to reason is not a distant ideal reserved for rare moments of clarity. It is a daily discipline built through countless small decisions. Every time you question a judgment before accepting it, you strengthen freedom. Every time you separate what belongs to you from what does not, you strengthen clarity. Every time you choose response over reaction, you strengthen character. These choices accumulate until reason becomes the natural governing force of your life. At the end of each day, examine where you allowed emotion to speak without challenge. Notice where you accepted impressions too quickly. Notice where you forgot to ask whether something was within your control. This reflection is not meant to produce guilt. It is meant to restore awareness. Awareness is what allows correction. Without awareness, the same patterns repeat endlessly without resistance. Gradually, you will see that inner freedom is not something granted by external circumstances. It is something built through disciplined judgment. No event can take it away unless you surrender it through unexamined reaction. No person can remove it unless you give away your authority to interpret reality. This freedom is always available because it depends only on the quality of your thinking in this moment. To live according to reason is to reclaim authorship of your own mind. It is to refuse automatic belief in every impression. It is to choose clarity over reaction, truth over comfort, and judgment over impulse. When this becomes your daily practice, you discover a form of freedom that no external condition can break. Not because life becomes predictable, but because you finally learn how to remain steady within its unpredictability. That is the true work of the disciplined mind, and it begins each time you choose to think before you react.